Down in the engine room, we have 3 banks of batteries. The first bank is starboard side, and it's 2 6-volt like golf cart batteries. That's the engine start. And the port side, I've got 2 boxes of a different type of battery. They're 6-volt. There's 4 of them. They're like these thin half width. I think they're 1/2 C width batteries. Anyway, they were kind of funky. I had a hard time ordering them to replace them to make them fit. So that's my house bank, and then the third one is a single 12-volt aft port side, which is the generator start battery. And since I don't have a generator right now, that's what prompted me to make some updates to our charging system. At the breaker panel, there is a AB both selector switch with a charge position. This appears to select which bank is powering all the panel utility power. Doesn't affect the engine start or the windlass. It's just everything else on board. And the back side is a little scary. There's a bunch of jumpers, and it looks like the AC battery charger charges both banks no matter where the selector switch is positioned. This switch scares me. I'm going to show you the backside and why, and I think I'm going to swap it out with a newer like Blue Sea or Perco AB or both switch and clean up the wiring on the backside. Show you right now. I've got AC power, shore power active. We're charging our banks because they're low, and it's a 30 amp charger, and you can see we're pulling a full 30 amps, 30.2. Here's the backside of that switch. The thing that makes me nervous is this number 2 charger wire, bank number 2, is then jumpered to what I think is the charge section on the switch. This wire right now with 30 amps flowing, which is way too much juice, I believe, for this gauge. I need to look all this up. It's 85 degrees right now. This guy at the contacts is 115 degrees at the crimp connectors, and in the middle here it's 95. So it's warm to the touch, and these are a little hot to the touch. So yeah, that's really warm. Scary. Someone wired up, and I don't know if this was from the factory or a previous owner, but there's just a double pole, double throw on-off switch for the starter motor and windlass. So these have these heavy gauge 1/0 cables that run to the windlass motor and the starter motor, and this switch, when in the off position, interrupts the current to those 2 motors, and then the 2 battery bank leads run to this solenoid. So like this is engine start bank, this is the house bank, and when you press the starter motor at the helm, it triggers this solenoid over these low amp lines that trigger 2 solenoids, the engine start solenoid as well as this solenoid here, which combines the 2 banks. So the banks are combined only when you're holding down the starter button, so the engine is always cranking over with current from both banks. So my plan is to remove this solenoid, and I'm going to replace it with a automatic charging relay. I have this Blue Sea ACR. Got this online. It was under $100. I believe it's rated for up to 120 amps. Yes, 120 amps of current from an alternator. And what this will do is whenever it's seeing over, I think it's 13 volts on the A side, it'll trigger the relay to combine the 2 banks. So just replacing the purpose of the solenoid. My trade-off is now the engine will only start from the A bank, which is fine by me. If for some reason the A bank is depleted, I carry jumper cables on board, and I could always jump from the house bank over to the starboard side engine start bank to get the engine running, and then this ACR will allow us to charge both banks when we're underway. ACR is installed. I've got it very temporarily, short term, zip tied, and I'm going to make a new piece of plywood and epoxy it, a new panel to hold the ACR and the on-off switch. I'm going to take some measurements today and work on that at home. I also purchased for the 2 battery banks these terminal block fuses. and I neglected to order the actual fuse that goes in there. So I installed one of them, although it's not active right now, it's bypassed. I removed the jumper cable that was running hot. It looks like this may have been the previous owner's solution to get the alternator to charge both banks even when the selector switch is set to 1 or 2. This would just bridge from 1 to 2. But when I was pushing a 30 amp battery charger through it, which the alternator is the same amps or higher, this thing is running really hot, and the alternator's suspect, so I don't know. Scary. This sure seems like the source of a boat burning to the ground, so I'm glad I found it and removed it.